Right now, somewhere in Mexico City, someone is being taken. Not lost, not late, taken. Pulled off a sidewalk, dragged out of a car, walked out through their own front gate by men who've done this so many times it barely registers as a crime to them anymore. It happens roughly once every hour in this city. And here's the number that should really turn your stomach. Most of the people who vanish this way never make it back home. That's the world we're stepping into. And the man at the center of this story isn't a cop, isn't on assignment, isn't trying to save anybody. When we meet him, he's just a man who's run out of reasons to keep breathing. At the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to John Creasy, a former U.S. government operative who spent close to 2 decades doing the kind of work that never makes it onto an official record. Counterterrorism, black ops, missions that, on paper, never happened. These days, though, the only war he's fighting is with himself, and whiskey is winning. He shows up in Mexico City with no job waiting, no real plan, nothing but an old friend's name and a restlessness eating away at him from the inside. That friend is Paul Rayburn, a former colleague from Creasy's intelligence days who's since built himself a very comfortable new life running a private security firm for Mexico City's wealthiest families. Business, it turns out, is booming, because in this city, kidnapping has become one of the most profitable industries around. Rayburn is overjoyed to see his old friend again, even though it's obvious Creasy is a shadow of the man he used to be. When Rayburn asks what he's even doing here, Creasy doesn't have a real answer. Drifting, drinking, waiting for something he can't name. He's about to find it. He just doesn't know it yet. We're introduced next to Samuel Ramos, a wealthy but financially stretched local businessman, sitting down with his lawyer, Jordan Kalfus, to talk through an uncomfortable problem. His daughter's kidnapping insurance is about to expire, and the policy won't renew without a bodyguard on payroll. Kalfus doesn't mince words about what's at stake, bringing up a recent case where a kidnapped child was eventually handed back to her family missing an ear. It's blunt, and it's meant to be. Samuel's wife, Lisa, has been pushing for months to get protection for their 9-year-old daughter, Pita. Samuel finally caves, though not really because he believes his little girl is in any real danger. He just wants the insurance paperwork sorted and his wife off his back. Kalfus's advice is simple. Find someone cheap, someone who looks fine on paper, and don't get too attached. It doesn't need to be permanent. It just needs to satisfy the insurance company. That cheap hire is about to be John Creasy. Rayburn, sensing that his friend needs money and maybe something to live for even more, pitches him the job. Creasy nearly laughs him out of the room. What family in their right mind hires a burned-out drunk to guard their child? But Rayburn doesn't let it go, and with Samuel's business quietly struggling, a trustworthy face matters more than an expensive one. Reluctantly, Creasy agrees to at least sit down with the family. The interview that follows is quietly one of the most telling scenes in the whole film. Samuel is clearly impressed flipping through Creasy's file. Nearly 2 decades of military service, deep counterterrorism experience, and can't understand why someone this qualified would want a job like this. Creasy doesn't dress it up. He drinks, and it slows him down. When Samuel presses him on what happens if serious professionals come after his daughter, Creasy's answer is brutally honest. He'll do what he can, but the results will match what he's being paid. Oddly enough, that honesty is exactly what gets him hired, on one condition. Lisa can never find out about the drinking. Moments later, we meet Lisa Ramos, who takes an immediate liking to Creasy for one simple reason. He's American, and in a city where trust is rare, that's apparently enough to go on. What Samuel conveniently leaves out is that Lisa has already turned down several other candidates before Creasy even walked through the door. There's something about him she can't explain, but it just feels right to her. Then there's Pita, an endlessly curious 9-year-old who gives Creasy the full tour of the house, introduces him to the staff, and mentions, almost as a throwaway line, that the parent now living in his room used to belong to the bodyguard before him. Nobody explains what happened to that guy. You're not really supposed to ask. That night, in one of the quietest but most important scenes early in the film, Lisa tucks Pita into bed, and Pita compares her new bodyguard to her teddy bear, big, and just a little bit sad. On the spot, she renames the bear after him, Creasy Bear. It plays like a cute, forgettable moment between mother and daughter. Do not forget it. That detail is going to matter more than you could possibly guess right now. Alone that night, Creasy drinks, not casually, but like a man testing exactly how far he can push himself before something inside him gives out. The next morning, before his first real day even starts, he opens the window of his room and sets the caged bird free, watching it disappear into the sky. It's a small gesture. It's also not subtle at all about what it means. On the drive to school, we get our first real look at who Pita actually is. She fires question after question at Creasy. Where he's from, what his old job was really like, even whether being black makes life in Mexico harder for him. Then, almost casually, She mentions that 24 kidnappings have happened in just the last few days. Creasy isn't shaken by the number. He's shaken by how easily a 9-year-old rattles it off, like she's reading a weather report. At the school gate, we meet Madre, the headmistress, a nun who greets Pita warmly, and then turns her attention to Creasy, asking him, gently, but directly, whether he's ever seen God's hand in the work he's done. His answer is short and loaded with everything he's not saying out loud, not for a long time. It's a throwaway exchange on the surface. It's actually planting the exact idea this whole story is going to test, whether a man like Creasy is even capable of being saved. By the end of that first day, though, his patience is already worn through. Pita keeps pressing. More questions, more curiosity, even about the old scars on his hands, until Creasy finally loses it and makes it clear, once and for all, that friendship was never part of the job description. Protection was. She insists she's not crying. She very clearly is. That evening, Lisa checks in on him and spots a Bible on his nightstand, which clearly isn't what she expected to find. She gently explains that Pita isn't trying to annoy him. She just wants a friend, and doesn't have very many. Creasy, convinced he might be the wrong man for this job entirely, offers to step aside for someone more sociable. Lisa won't let him off that easy. She tells him she trusts him with her daughter, then adds, almost like a test, that she'll be joining them on the school run the next morning. That night, Creasy hits absolute bottom. Alone, drowning in whiskey, he loads a single round into his pistol, spins the chamber, presses it to his own head, and pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. Shaken and soaked from the rain outside, he calls Rayburn in the middle of the night, asking, almost too casually, why a gun like his might fail to fire. Rayburn, barely awake, starts putting together what his friend is really asking, but Creasy hangs up before he can say much of anything. Standing outside in the dark, Creasy glances up at the house and catches Pita watching him silently from her window. She vanishes from sight almost instantly. Neither of them ever brings it up. But something between them has already shifted. Quietly, Creasy pockets the bullet that didn't fire, almost like a debt he now owes to whatever just spared him. From here, the whole tone of the film starts to change, and so does Creasy. The next morning, on the way to school, he clocks a car tailing them a little too closely. Before he can even react, Pita has already started scribbling down the plate number. The car peels off before either of them can finish it, but the moment lingers in the air, a quiet warning neither of them says out loud. That afternoon, we see Pita at swim practice for the first time, and it tells us everything about her talent and exactly what's holding it back. Once she's in the water, she's clearly the strongest swimmer there, but she's always last off the blocks, flinching every time the starter gun cracks. She still finishes third. Watching closely, Creasy tells her the truth. She's not slow. She's scared. And those are two very different problems to fix. She admits she has a major meet coming up in a few weeks and doubts she can actually win it. Creasy tells her she can, if she's willing to train for it properly. With Sam and Lisa frequently away on business, Creasy becomes the one constant fixture in Pita's daily life, and he throws himself into coaching her with an intensity that says far more about his own healing than it does about swimming technique. He claps two bricks together over and over to mimic the starter gun until she stops flinching at the sound. He drills a simple idea into her, again and again. The very sound she's spent her whole life afraid of isn't something to run from. It's the thing that's supposed to set her free. Slowly, painfully, she starts to actually believe him. Somewhere in the middle of all that training, something unexpected happens. Creasy laughs. It catches Pita completely off guard, since she's never seen anything close to a real smile from him before, and he immediately downplays it, insisting it was barely even a smirk. It's a tiny, almost throwaway beat. It also tells you everything about how far this man has traveled emotionally in just a few short weeks. When Sam and Lisa return from one of their trips, Pita is thrilled, not just to see her parents again, but because they've brought home the puppy she'd been begging for. That night, Lisa quietly watches from the doorway as Creasy helps Pita with her homework, the two of them trading jokes and laughing like old friends. It's a warm scene, but there's an edge underneath it too. Lisa watching her daughter bond with her bodyguard in a way that, lately, feels stronger than her own daughter's bond with her increasingly absent father. Soon enough, the day of Pita's big swim meet finally arrives. Sam and Lisa are once again traveling for business, which means Creasy is the one standing poolside giving her the pep talk beforehand. When Madre greets him at the pool and gently notes that Pita's parents couldn't make it this time, there's a quiet, loaded beat between them. An unspoken understanding that today, whether he ever signed up for it or not, Creasy is the one showing up as her family. When the starting gun cracks, Pita doesn't hesitate for even a second. She explodes off the blocks and wins the race outright, sprinting straight into Creasy's arms afterward, glowing with pride. That night, celebrating with Rayburn and his wife, Pita hands Creasy a small gift bought with her own allowance money. A necklace with the image of St. Jude, the patron saint of lost causes. It seems like a small, sweet detail in the moment. If you know anything about where this story ends up, you already know exactly why that particular saint matters. Later, alone in his room, Creasy reaches for his bottle out of pure habit, and for the first time in the entire film, he sets it down untouched, picking up his Bible instead. Whatever battle has been raging inside him, it looks, for a moment, like the better half might actually be winning. This movie isn't going to let him keep that win for long. Tension creeps back and almost immediately. Pita tells her father she wants to drop her piano lessons entirely and focus on swimming instead. Samuel shuts the conversation down. He's already paying for one of the city's top instructors, and that's final. On its own, it's an ordinary family disagreement. It's about to have consequences nobody in that house could have imagined. The next day, on the drive to that same piano lesson, Pita brings up the mystery car from before, admitting she still hasn't figured out the last digit of its plate number. Creasy tells her not to worry, he'll take care of it later. In the moment, it's a throwaway line. It will not stay throwaway for long. While Pita is inside her lesson, Creasy waits outside with her puppy. And that's exactly when everything falls apart. A police car suddenly blocks off the street. Then the same suspicious car from before reappears. Creasy's instincts fire off before his brain even fully catches up. Something is very wrong. The instant Pita steps back outside, he screams for her to run and fires a warning shot into the air. Gunfire erupts around him almost immediately. Diving behind cover, Creasy manages to take down several of the attackers, including, shockingly, one of the police officers, who turns out to be just as dirty as the men he's supposedly there to stop. But Creasy takes hits of his own and goes down, right as Pita is dragged screaming into a waiting car. It's one of the most brutal, chaotic sequences in the entire movie, and it ends with Creasy unconscious on the pavement and Pita gone. The story spreads fast. At the hospital, police hold a press conference announcing Creasy's arrest, accusing him of killing 2 officers and possibly being connected to Pita's disappearance himself. A sharp investigative journalist named Mariana pushes back hard on the official story, asking publicly why 2 off-duty officers were on scene in full uniform. She doesn't get a straight answer from the police chief, but a federal investigator named Miguel Manzano steps forward and admits the uglier truth. Those 2 officers were dirty, just a visible piece of a much bigger rod inside the police force. Back at the Ramos house, Lisa is inconsolable. Lieutenant Victor Fuentes of the Anti-Kidnapping Division shows up offering assistance. Assistance that Calfus, the family lawyer, immediately tries to wave off, insisting the family intends to handle the ransom privately. Fuentes warns them, almost too casually, that going in completely alone rarely ends the way families hope. Then the kidnappers call. Their demand, $10 million, split evenly into 2 bags, delivered alone, with police strictly off limits. Samuel is walked through an exact route, an exact vehicle, and an exact meeting point. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Rayburn sneaks past the guards to check on his unconscious friend. When Creasy finally comes to, the very first word out of his mouth is Pita's name. Rayburn has to break the news that she's already been missing 2 days, with the negotiations still dragging on with no resolution. On the night of the drop, every instruction is followed exactly as given. Samuel leaves the ransom precisely where he's told to. And then everything goes catastrophically sideways. A second, rival group ambushes the pickup point, guns blazing, and steals the ransom before the original kidnappers can even collect it. The fallout is immediate and vicious. The kidnapper calls back furious, accusing Samuel of orchestrating the ambush himself, claiming his own nephew was killed in the chaos of the shootout. Lisa grabs the phone, begging for mercy, but it's already too late. The kidnapper coldly tells her that Pita will die because of what just happened. Lisa completely collapses, screaming for everyone in her house to leave. Not long after, Rayburn arrives to deliver the news to Creasy in person. Pita didn't make it. The ransom drop fell apart. One of the kidnapper's own relatives was killed in the crossfire, and in retaliation, they killed her. For most stories, that would be the ending. For John Creasy, it's only the halfway point. Manzano moves Creasy to a secure location to recover, explaining bluntly that a hospital is a dangerous place for a man who just killed 2 corrupt cops. Even weak and bandaged, Creasy studies photographs of suspects, and though one face seems to catch his attention for a beat too long, he insists he doesn't recognize it. What he does ask for are photos of the officers involved, and Manzano explains that they were part of something much bigger, a shadow network of corrupt police, judges, and politicians known only as La Hermandad. The Brotherhood. Against doctor's orders, Rayburn helps Creasy slip out before he's anywhere close to fully healed. On the drive, Creasy notices they're being followed, not by kidnappers this time, but by Mariana, the journalist. Instead of losing her, Creasy tells Rayburn to drive straight to the scene of Pita's abduction and let her follow if she wants. There, haunted by what happened, Creasy finally meets Mariana face to face. She hands him something unsettling, a sign that someone's already placed a death curse on him, but offers something far more useful than sympathy. Help tracking down everyone responsible, since exposing La Hermandad has become her mission too. Before leaving the Ramos house for good, Creasy slips quietly into Pita's empty bedroom to gather his things, and finds her diary, which contains the missing final digit of that license plate she never got to finish writing, along with private notes revealing just how much she'd come to care about him. Lisa catches him there, and in a heartbreaking moment, admits she feels like she failed her daughter completely. When she asks what he plans to do now, his answer is flat and absolute. Track down everyone responsible, and make sure none of them walk away from it. What follows is methodical and brutal. Using the now complete license plate, Mariana's contacts trace it to a man named Jorge. Creasy finds him, drags him out to an isolated location, and extracts the truth through means the movie doesn't shy away from showing. What breaks Jorge is simple, relentless pain, and eventually he gives up two things Creasy needs. The man who took custody of Pita afterward is known only as the Guardian, and he can be found working the door of a nightclub called the Rave, where regulars know him by a much darker nickname, the Butcher. Creasy finds the Butcher exactly where Jorge said he'd be. At gunpoint, he forces his way into a hidden back room and takes everyone inside hostage, including a woman connected to the operation. When they refuse to cooperate, he executes the Butcher on the spot to make sure everyone understands he's serious. The one remaining man, terrified, insists he's just a low-level American expat pulling $200 a week off a prepaid card, with no real idea who's actually in charge. Creasy doesn't believe his first answer about who actually killed Pita, and shoots him in the leg until the real story finally comes out. The boss's own brother lost control during the failed ransom exchange, and killed her in a fit of rage. Creasy turns to the woman next, who claims she can lead him to where the girl is being kept, and for one gut-wrenching moment, it seems almost possible that Pita might somehow still be alive. Instead, they find an entirely different kidnapped child locked in a cell. Furious, Creasy floods the building with gas, sets it alight, and fires warning shots to clear the crowd before the whole club goes up in flames. Rescuing the child in the process, even as the actual people responsible for Pita's death remain just out of reach. He hands the rescued girl and his hostage over to Mariana, along with an ATM card recovered from the club, and asks her to trace exactly who's funding it. He also asks what she knows about Lieutenant Fuentes, the same officer who'd shown up offering help at the Ramos house. Her answer is chilling. Fuentes has been caught before with an unexplained fortune in cash and a body, yet somehow was never charged. He isn't just corrupt. He's one of the top men inside La Hermandad, and he travels with more security than the president of Mexico. Days later, in one of the film's most explosive sequences, Creasy stakes out Fuentes' armored convoy from an apartment overlooking the route, a shoulder-fired rocket launcher in hand. The elderly couple who live there quietly let him stay, the husband offering a small piece of wisdom about forgiveness, that it's a matter between other people and God, not something Creasy needs to worry about tonight. His job, as Creasy sees it, is simply to arrange the introduction. When the convoy rounds the corner, Creasy fires. The lead vehicle is obliterated instantly. He storms down into the wreckage, tears into the armored car with gunfire and a grenade, and drags a shaken, half-conscious Fuentes out alive, because a dead man can't answer questions. Stripped down and restrained, Fuentes cracks almost immediately once the interrogation starts, boasting, even now, that he isn't just a corrupt cop, he's the actual head of La Hermandad. Creasy isn't impressed. He tells Fuentes he's planted an explosive device inside his body and starts a 5-minute countdown. Under that kind of pressure, Fuentes finally admits the truth about the ransom drop. He was the one who stole it before it ever reached the kidnappers, pocketing $2.5 million for himself and stuffing the rest of the bags with worthless paper. And he wasn't working alone. The Ramos family's own attorney, Jordan Calfus, was in on it with him. The timer runs out. Creasy walks away without a backward glance. Following that lead to Calfus's house, Creasy arrives to find the lawyer already dead, murdered, floating in his own swimming pool, a blade left behind nearby as the likely weapon. Inside the house, a fax machine is still warm to the touch, and when Creasy feeds it paper, it prints out a bank statement from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. One name tied to that account stops him cold, Samuel Ramos. Creasy heads straight for the Ramos house and confronts the family, demanding answers. Lisa looks completely lost as Creasy lays out everything he's found: the stolen ransom, the missing millions, the offshore account with her husband's name attached to it. Cornered with nowhere left to hide, Samuel finally breaks and confesses. Buried in debt from his late father's failing business and his own, he'd conspired with Calfus to stage the entire kidnapping as an insurance scam. The plan, as Calfus had sold it to him, was simple. Pita would be kept somewhere safe for 2 days, watching cartoons and eating ice cream, completely unaware anything was even wrong, then returned home unharmed. Nobody was ever supposed to get hurt. Nobody was supposed to die. Lisa is shattered beyond words. Creasy, in a moment that somehow feels heavier than any of the violence before it, quietly empties his gun and sets it down on the table, sliding over the exact bullet that once misfired and spared his own life. A silent, brutal suggestion of what Samuel should do next. Then he walks out. As he leaves the house, a single gunshot rings out behind him. It's Lisa who finds her husband's body. With the stolen ransom finally traced through the ATM card, Manzano's team locates an address. And while the people living there don't match the shadowy figure known only as the Voice, a photograph recovered from inside the home finally gives Manzano his first real look at the man who's been orchestrating everything. He tells Mariana to run the photo in the next day's paper. That night, an armed man ambushes Mariana outside her own home, shooting her driver and warning her that publishing the photo will cost her life. She refuses to back down, and immediately calls Creasy with an address, a name, and instructions to grab tomorrow's paper the second it's out. Creasy stakes out the address and follows a man inside, the brother of the Voice himself. Before the gate can swing shut behind him, Creasy forces his way in. Inside, a woman connected to the family screams at him to get out, while the brother, panicking, shoots Creasy and bolts. Wounded but not slowed, Creasy chases him down through the streets until the man wrecks his own vehicle, then drags him back inside to finish the job. Under threat, the terrified woman finally gives up what she knows. The Voice's real name is Daniel Sanchez, and the man Creasy just shot is his younger brother, Aurelio. The only way to reach Daniel, she explains, is through a pager, and Creasy forces her to send the message immediately. When Daniel finally calls back, Creasy makes it brutally clear that he's holding his family and won't hesitate to hurt them further. Daniel, cold and businesslike, calmly asks how much money it'll take to make this go away, and something in Creasy finally snaps. He fires his weapon, maiming Aurelio right there on the call, as the terrified woman begs him to just take whatever cash is in the house and leave. But Creasy doesn't want money. He wants Daniel. In person. Daniel hangs up, only to call back minutes later with an offer that changes absolutely everything. He'll return Pita, alive. Creasy can barely process what he's hearing. Daniel proposes a trade. Creasy turns himself in and releases Aurelio, and Pita comes home safely. Refusing to take it on faith, Creasy demands proof only the real Pita could give. The private nickname she gave her teddy bear, all the way back at the very beginning of this story. Daniel calls again with the answer. Creasy Bear. It's the one detail nobody could have faked. Pita is really, actually alive. Creasy agrees to the exchange immediately, calling Lisa with the impossible news and the location to meet. When she arrives hours later, Creasy hands her the shotgun and Aurelio, along with one final instruction. Do not let him go until Pita is safely in her arms, and whatever happens, do not wait around for him. Wounded and running on nothing but willpower, Creasy walks alone toward the bridge where the kidnappers are waiting with Pita. The second she sees him, she breaks free and sprints straight into his arms, saying his name over and over like it's the only word she has left. He holds her, checks that she's not hurt, and gently tells her to keep walking, toward her mother, waiting on the other side. When she asks where he's going, his answer is quiet, and it tells you everything you need to know about what's about to happen. He's going home too. He presses her diary back into her hands and urges her to run. The moment Pita is safely across, Lisa releases Aurelio exactly as promised. Mother and daughter collapse into each other in tears, finally, impossibly, back together. Behind them, the kidnappers close in on Creasy. There's no fight left in him, and honestly, there doesn't need to be. He walks toward them anyway, because this was never a fight he expected to win. They load him into a car and drive off. Pita watching helplessly from the distance, as the only person who ever truly protected her disappears down the road. In the back seat, clutching the St. Jude medal Pita once gave him, with the outline of a distant volcano fading on the horizon, John Creasy finally lets go. That same day, Manzano and his team track down and kill Daniel Sanchez, the Voice. During his arrest, closing the loop on everything Creasy gave his life to finish. At its core, this was never really a story about revenge, even though revenge is the part most people remember. It's a story about a man who'd already decided his own life was worthless, and who found one reason to believe otherwise in a 9-year-old girl who looked at him and saw a big, sad bear worth loving anyway. He didn't get to keep that reason for himself. He made absolutely sure she got to keep living hers. Okay, If you made it all the way through that with dry eyes, respect, because I definitely didn't. And if you're thinking about closing this tab right now without hitting subscribe, after everything Creasy just went through for you, come on. The man used a literal rocket launcher on a motorcade for less. Least you can do is smash that button so you don't miss the next breakdown. And while you're down there, drop a comment. Tell me what scene wrecked you the hardest, whether you'd already seen this one, or which movie you want me to cover next. I read all of them, and it genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.